Everyone's already recording, right?
Yeah, recording.
Yeah, now just do one round of tell your name, tell the club.
No. Ram is fine. Ram, you do exactly what you did there.
Anyway, we're going to do this all through the podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Tale of Two Halves. It's the fantastic football podcast that I started primarily to enjoy the kind of season that Manchester United have been having. But before we get into that, I would like to first and foremost tell you this is the first time I'm wearing my CSK colours on this show proudly because of all the shocking sporting results that happened over the weekend, this was the most shocking one. No loss in a win like that puts me in a very bright spirit and a very nice mood, and of course all the other things that happened. So thanks so much to the boys in yellow for doing it. But we have one hell of an episode because of one hell of a game week that happened over the last Saturday and Sunday. And where do I start? Do we start about Mourinho's comeback in Old Trafford, or do we start about Pep buying a 50 million centre back and yet not managing to hold a clean sheet? Or do we get into Lampard, after all the shit we gave him last episode, teaching us how to keep a clean sheet? I can't wait to get into this. This is a one hell of an episode, and I would like to introduce my panelists here. Of course, this whole podcast is happening entirely thanks to this one guy. He's a very good friend of mine, and he's also a Manchester United fan, and he's the reason why I'm doing this week on week, guys. I thought this podcast was for Leeds, but fuck Leeds United. We are so happy to have Suhrith Parthasarathy, a Manchester United fan and a very good friend of mine on this show. Thank you so much for coming, Suhrith. And then we do have, since our fellow Liverpool comedian colleague also couldn't make it because he was too busy celebrating Liverpool's fantastic catapultation, we thought we'll replace him with an equally nice and adequately funny Abijit Ganguly. Thank you so much. Your first time in Tale of Two Halves. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for stepping in last minute.
That introduction does make me feel very special. Yeah.
Much like Ross Barkley stepped in last minute, but I'm sorry to rub it in. This is how it's going to go down for you for the rest of this evening. And of course, last but not the least, the man that everyone in the comment section want to hear, not because of his insight, but the deep bass voice is what they say. Ram, give us your best bass impression.
Sorry, I'm just going to fall flat here, but thank you.
Okay, that's Ram at his best. Welcome, guys. So let's first get to the first part of the show, which is where we take the look at the results that happened over the weekend in this segment called Random Person Reading Results.
Chelsea 4, Crystal Palace 0, Everton 4, Brighton 2, Leeds 1, Manchester City 1, Newcastle 3, Burnley 1, Leicester 0, West Ham 3, Southampton 2, West Brom 0, Arsenal 2, Sheffield 1, Wolves 1, Fulham 0, Manchester United 1, Spurs 6, Aston Villa 7, Liverpool 2.
Do you watch football?
Very rarely.
What do you do for a living?
I run a workshop, mechanic shed kind of workshop.
Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
A man who rarely watches football and yet had a smile on his face when he read the result between Spurs and Manchester United. What does that tell you about this beautiful game, guys? It tells you everything you need to know. It's the most powerful thing that crosses all the boundaries that these humans set and ask most surprising result and most disappointing result. You know the drill. Suhrith, go for it.
Well, most surprising result was obviously Liverpool 2 and Aston Villa 7. I think that must be the most surprising result of the weekend. Disappointing, I mean, for me personally, obviously, Man United losing 6-1 to Spurs at Old Trafford. Yeah.
Abijit.
Yeah, I think most surprising as well as most disappointing. Both are the same for me. Do I really even need to say which match? Come on.
Guys, we have a lot of program left. If you're already sounding so despondent about talking about the game,
you're not starting at the most happiest. You're not starting at the most happiest thing as well, right? Most disappointing result, of course. While showing disappointment, I won't be like, yay, Liverpool lost.
Fair enough. Okay, Ram, you have the biggest smile of all the episodes. Yeah. That's a rarity. That tells you the kind of weekend we've had. If Ram is the happiest, not even me. Go on, Ram.
Exactly. I can finally be happy for a change. So, The most surprising result was probably Aston Villa 7, Liverpool 2, because of the sheer number of goals that Aston Villa scored. And the most disappointing one, I mean, that's kind of weird because all the results were fine, but probably Everton 4, Brighton 2, because I like Brighton and I don't like it when they lose. So.
Fair enough. So let's get into the matches in detail. Let's get.
What about you? What about you for you?
First time any panelist has ever asked me this question. You know, we are 4 episodes down, and the first 3 episodes I never gave my answers, and none of these fuckers even bothered asking, "What about you?" Abijit, Ganguly, this is why we need comedians on this show, because the empathy only comes from you guys, da. Thank you. This is just me buying time about, because I've never thought of this answer. So of course the most surprising result would definitely be Manchester City and Leeds. Because there is no way I thought it was going to be a 1-1 with that first 20 minutes. The most disappointing one, I would definitely have to go with the Spurs one, because you should have gone for double digits, man. What is this? You have them there. How can you not go for the kill? It was just right there, Mourinho. We have to talk about that. So let's start with that.
Aravind, if I can ask you, seriously, you think City Leeds, I mean, you love Leeds, City Leeds 1-1 is more surprising than Aston Villa, Liverpool 7-2. Like that is
like that.
surprising.
Fair enough. With Aston Villa, it was not surprising because the signs were there early on in the season that Liverpool were going to leak goals. So, but more on that later. We'll start with Manchester and Tottenham, and of course I'm not going to get into any specifics because I have a lot of love and respect for my friend Suhrith here to show up on this day after what happened. So Suhrith, I'm opening it up for you. You have a open table. Go start wherever you want to start.
I mean, where does one start really? It's clearly a hugely disappointing result. I mean, you can point fingers at so many different people, right? I mean, you obviously have to look at the coach. You got to look at Solskjaer and all of this, and because it's one thing to place your blame on the lack of signings or not getting sort of some of these positions filled up, but ultimately, I mean, to capitulate this way, to lose 6-1 to Spurs, and look, yes, the red card, we'll come to that later. I don't think it was. I think it was a very harsh red card, and if Martial was going to get sent off, Lamela should have also gotten sent off. But even then, I mean, even once you're 2-1 down and you're down to 10 men, to kind of concede the goals that they did, the third and the fourth goals in such quick succession, it was just appalling. And is not the solution. You ask any other Premier League manager or any other fan of any other Premier League club, ask any other fan of any championship club, would they want Solskjaer as their manager? No one is going to say yes, right? So it's clear that he's appalling.
Sure, let's talk about Solskjaer then, because he made a lot of changes in this particular match, right? Lindelof is dropped. Now, what did you make? What do you think he was going for? What about his approach to this match that you don't probably like?
Yeah, look, I mean, he signed Harry Maguire for all of this money, and Mourinho wanted Maguire, Pep wanted Maguire. Now one sort of really wonders why is it and what is it that all these managers saw in Maguire? Because I think there's been a lot of criticism on Maguire, especially in terms of his lack of pace, because the defender who plays next to him has to cover for that much more because of Maguire's lack of pace. And given that you have the personnel that you did, for Solskjaer to go with the high line that he did at the beginning of the match, and having taken the lead in slightly fortuitous circumstances, the penalty was a penalty, but it was kind of a poor challenge and they got fortunate with it. But having taken the lead to continue playing the high line that they did, to concede all that space in behind, and you don't have a keeper who's sort of a sweeper keeper, right? This is not Edison or Allison behind, it's De Gea. So if you're going to play that high line, you need a keeper who's able to kind of come and command that area. De Gea is sort of rooted to the 6-yard box, really. He's not even sort of hovering around the 18-yard box. So I think Solskjaer has a lot to answer for. He did get a lot of the defensive structure right, especially last season, much of last season, and certainly post the lockdown. So it's kind of disappointing to see the regression there. But the reason why he played Bailly was simply because Bailly is quicker than Lindelof, and Lindelof has had a terrible few games, starting with Sevilla last season, the end of last season, the Europa League, onto the first couple of games this season. But Bailly was all over the place, and this is what's the solution here? Do you sign another defender? I mean, how long can you keep signing players? At some point,
solution is another editorial, so we probably have to wait for that. In the second half of the season, you will get many more opportunities. But there was so much tactically a lot of things to nitpick in this match. I'll open it up and then probably come to you guys with it. Like I was right off the bat, you could tell Mourinho had his team pumped up like no, it's like old Mourinho. The difference was the old Mourinho's teams used to do this for every match. The new Mourinho only does it when he gives that much of a fuck about that particular fixture. It's like it's so evident, you can tell that if he cares, if there is something for him to lose, he'll become the biggest troll and his players will become the biggest trolls. If he doesn't, then that's it. I don't see the kind of pressing they did was very Pochettino-like, right? This is like the old Spurs. I'm like, when did Mourinho's Spurs start pressing like this? So clearly, especially given the context of the Amazon documentary, you can see how much he would have gone and riled up each and every player in his own words. I think he uses the words "be dirty, evil cunts" is what he says, or something along those lines. He says, you need to be cunts. You cannot be nice guys. Nice guys don't win. And boy, were they cunts. I mean, I'll give you the best example. I did not know up until yesterday that Højbjerg had this evil streak in him. The kind of dirty things he did yesterday in terms of not just stopping the play, but also riling up the opponents. He did something to Pogba that I saw where you could tell that he's selling it more. And that I think that mentality is what led to a Lamela doing what he did. Yes, what a Lamela did was pathetic. But having said that, if the manager there, you know who the manager is. He's telling you to get every edge possible because this game means so much to him. So that was really, really fun to watch, just to see Mourinho's inconsistency. But on this game, he showed up because he's all about drama. He wants the limelight. Ram, but tell me about tactically what did he do in specific?
I think tactically it wasn't as much of something that you can dissect to that level. I think overall United just did not turn up at all on the day because there were so many turnovers towards that left side and in midfield that Spurs' job it just became ridiculously easy. And obviously they had Lamela on the right, didn't they? And he was obviously Lamela did what Lamela does, which is hassle the opponent a lot, heckle them, harry them, try to win back possession. So, having Aurier, Sissoko and Lamela all on the same side, combined with United's pretty shambolic left, created a massive advantage for Spurs down that side. And I also think Højbjerg had a superb game, and he actually showed why Mourinho wanted him. One of the reasons is what you mentioned, the kind of intangibles that he brings in terms of the attitude on the pitch. And the other was, I think he held the midfield line superbly, and I think he found some very good passes between the lines from his defensive midfield position. So I think Højbjerg was actually a bargain DM to be had during this transfer window, when Spurs actually went and took that. So credit to them.
I wanted Højbjerg at United, at the end of the season. I mean, for 15 million, amazing sign.
Exactly. That's nothing.
Right. So I would wrap this with some beautiful quotes. Okay. I don't know if you guys haven't seen Evra's rant.
Yeah.
The hate I have for Manchester United.
Why do you hate Evra? What's there to hate about Evra for you?
1 second. I was actually going to say something nice, Suhrith. You killed it. I was going to set the context to say, the hate I have for this club is very evident. But having said that, sometimes when there is pure passion involved, you have to see through all the noise and see through that person's passion, which is what the Evra's rant was. What he did on the Sky Sports show. If it's on YouTube, go check it out if you haven't. That was him purely talking from his heart and being able to put himself out there to say it shows how much it hurt him. I had a smile on my face, but that man cares, and that was a very nice moment in football to show someone being so unfiltered as opposed to being always putting on this facade. So that was that was one point.
Shit's gone down when Patrice Evra starts talking about slapping people. Like seriously, something bad is happening if somebody as nice as him is starting to sound like Roy Keane, slapping people.
This much composure, if he had shown in the final third, he would have been a great goal scorer. But there was fantastic composure that he showed. But the best quote from that match was what Mourinho said. I'm going to wrap this with that, which is, imagine if they had an attacking coach. With a defensive coach, they scores 5, 7, 6. With an attacking coach, I was like, oh God, this fellow. I mean, given the context of what happened last episode, if Mourinho had enough motivation, I thought Solskjaer also had enough motivation. Solskjaer should go and tell his coach, tell his team, guys, I just barked up the wrong tree. Mourinho is going to be mad next week. Please save my ass. I don't know how Man United came out happily in a stroll in the park, and Mourinho's team came out like, how can you talk about my manager like that? Like, man, it was just day and night. Yeah, so now we will move to Aston Villa Liverpool, and that is, of course, a result that none of us saw coming. So let me start with some of the things before we get into the Liverpool point. Let's first talk about the unsung heroes of this match. Can we talk about this kid who started out at Exeter City? Am I right, Ram? In that?
Yes.
Exeter City. What a story that of Ollie Watkins. From a player
Brilliant.
out in non-league to then to League Two, and then to a manager like Paul Tidsale to say, hey, he's being wasted in the left wing. He needs to be pushed into central attacking midfielder, and then to be brought by Brentford, the god of all scouting systems out there, and then to be shifted from central attacking mid to a centre forward to say, hey, you can bulk up. The kind of development and progression, if you could go and follow this guy's story, it's fantastic. And then to be the best striker in the championship for the last 2 seasons, and then to do it against the defending champions, that's one hell of a story. What we saw Ollie Watkins do is what he's known for, and to see all of it translate in Premier League should put an end to a lot of these irritating points that come up, which is, can he cut it in the Premier
Yes.
League? Can the championship is a different level? No, the gap isn't really that much. You have enough and more people. You have a Calvin Phillips who's playing, who's the best CDM in championship and who's right now an England starter. You have an Ollie Watkins, the top scorer, who's turning Van Dijk and Gomez inside out and scoring. So Ram, I know you want to get into this. Go for it. What do you like about Watkins?
First it was. It's obviously amazing and quite poetic that Watkins is going to flourish at Aston Villa under Dean Smith, who brought him from Exeter City to Brentford. But I think we saw a typical classic Ollie Watkins performance against Liverpool, because that left side that Aston Villa had, with Barkley kind of shifting into the wider half spaces and combining with Grealish, what Watkins does so well is. Well, I mean, I'm loath to call anyone a complete striker, but in whatever capacity, he is a complete striker for me in terms of his skill set, because he was doing everything you'd ask of him in a game against Liverpool, which is basically attack the spaces behind Alexander-Arnold all day, and even Andy Robertson. He was running the channels. He was retaining the ball in the final third, which is so important when you're playing Liverpool, because you get it into the spaces behind Alexander-Arnold, and you still have Naby Keita or Wijnaldum and Joe Gomez coming to win the ball back very quickly. So what someone like Ollie Watkins does really well is he runs the channels, he receives, and he makes it stick, and then he brings his teammates into play as well. And that's like a proper striker who can play. All this in addition to him making the perfect runs into the box to get into a number of crosses and finding the right spaces to shoot from. He did what he did best, and he could have got more goals. At the end, he missed like 2 good chances and hit the post once. So it's just
Happy for Watkins. We can all safely say that, and there's a lot more to come given the kind of team he is in.
Yeah.
And they were dying for a striker. They were crying out loud for a striker. They were creating so many chances, and they just got Barkley as well. That's another great player that can create for them with less pressure to play with. So it's a great setup there. So clearly there are some obvious problems at Liverpool right now with respect to Joe Gomez getting exposed time and again, and with Trent perhaps being asked to do more. So Adrian, I'm not even going to take into consideration, given the fact that he's not going to get a sniff at anything when Alisson is around. But these are starters we're looking at with respect to Trent and Joe Gomez. And Suhrith, so did it tell me now, because we are trying to make your day feel better? Do you see something in Liverpool that you think can apply for a longer run, or do you genuinely think it's just lack of a pre-season, early season jitters and all those things?
Yeah, I think the result itself is an aberration. I don't see this kind of being, kind of happening again.
I'm trying my best to cheer you up.
This is the strange thing. Liverpool lose 7-2, and I'm still not able to find joy in all of this because the kind of
It's same. All same. Everybody is feeling the same way. This is all disgruntled people. Yes.
I don't think that this is going to be a trend. I would very much doubt if it is. But there are certainly, as you said, areas of Liverpool's sort of tactical structure which are vulnerable. And you've seen this before as well. This has always been pointed. I don't think Bielsa was the one who kind of recognized for the first time that Liverpool are vulnerable in behind. I mean, look, Bielsa is a great manager.
Lampard did it
yeah,
last
I mean, this is
season.
not. You can't.
Where do you think Lampard picked it up from? In the Pearson Championship.
Well,
Could we please?
have you-
There is data for everything, Ram. You know this.
Don't you remember the goal that Rashford, for example, scored against Liverpool when it was the same area of the field that was exploited, this sort of area, space behind Trent Alexander-Arnold. And that's been a routine sort of vulnerability for Liverpool.
No, but so of course there's more of nuance there with respect to attacking someone in the high line is to get behind them, sure, but it's not as simple as having one or two attackers to go behind and having your whole front
No,
line.
that I agree. But my point is that this vulnerability has existed for some time. Whether it'll kind of transform itself into a regular feature, we'll have to wait and see. But Klopp this is where Klopp's I think genius really comes in terms of trying to get the team back up and trying to get them going, and the international break has come in a good time possibly for them. And you don't want.
And all they have to do is throw a Thiago in, and boom! First time was so natural and pure. But I'll try and fake it now. But okay, so now Leicester 0, West Ham 3. So on a day of multiple shocks, this should have also been right up there. It's almost like all ex-Manchester United managers decided to show up on this beautiful weekend to tell them what they've been missing. And I'm sure some of them are even regretting, maybe we should have Moyes back. But this man is redefining work from home. Suhrith, how is this happening? How is he? We are fucking losing our head figuring out this on a Zoom call, and yet he's sitting at home and pulling off
there was someone on Twitter or something had commented saying that Moyes in fact seems to be managing Man United from home and not West Ham. But be that as it may, I think that we need to give Moyes some amount of credit for this, because he seems to have. I mean, he had a pretty good spell first time around at West Ham, and I think he's kind of again building something decent there. He's kind of gotten rid of some of these slightly bigger names. Doesn't play Yarmolenko anymore. Doesn't start I forget his name. The old
Anderson and Lanzini is who you're going for.
Has been kept out as well, and he's got Antonio working his socks off up front, working as hard as anyone else, I think, in the league, really. And Fornals had a good game. And I think in midfield, Declan Rice, you can see why Chelsea want him. You can see why he's this highly rated, because, not only does he give you the kind of work rate that he does in terms of getting up and down from box to box, but he seems to be reasonably composed on the balls, has decent passing range, is exceptionally aware defensively, and I just think that he's clearly going to get a move at the end of the season, and it's going to be a big.
He's the future Chelsea captain.
Yeah, it appears so. Yeah.
Well, okay. Since you brought up giving credit to Moyes, and before I get this to Ram with, I have some points that probably we can work on, Ram, with respect to some of the things that Moyes has retained from the old Moyes and some of the things that he's done different about the new West Ham. Okay, because I was making these notes while watching the match. Point number one, which is retained from the old Moyes, or rather is this, the obsession with this central midfielder who goes on an advanced run and who can head the ball and who can get into a very attacking, aggressive central midfielder. Case A being Fellaini, now he has Soucek. The number of times I keep seeing this guy in the highlight reel, even if you don't watch the match, all you need to see is the number of times he gets into the box and causes something. That's something clearly Moyes is loves in his thing, right? In his tactics. That's part one. But the point is changed though. I've not seen Moyes use 5 at the back in Everton ever. I don't recall. Suhrith, you can tell me if he's done it in Manchester United. I don't recall that. Right? He's been comfortably doing it here at West Ham with 5 at the back, and it's kind of working out in the last few games as well. So clearly that is a sign. Playing 5 at the back is the new normal in Premier League these days. Clearly that's even Steve Bruce is doing it. David Moyes is doing it. That's everything you need to know. But having said that, he's holding on to this Fellaini obsession in Soucek, who's a fantastic player in that particular quality. So tell me, Ram, what did Leicester do right against a City that they couldn't do against Moyes?
I think it's there's a Latin phrase that is translated to who will guard the guards. I think this is a case of who will counterattack the counterattackers. So that's Leicester counterattacked Manchester City into oblivion last weekend. But this time, I think the exact same thing happened to Leicester as they did to Manchester City. So Leicester, in the past when we've talked about West Ham, it's just kind of funny how things come full circle, because West Ham had this done to them by Newcastle, and then we complained about Newcastle not having enough. West Ham not having enough creativity in their side at that time. I think the exact same thing happened to Leicester here, because they didn't play. I think James Maddison was a big miss for them, because they kind of tried to hit West Ham on transitions and overloads yet again, which didn't work because West Ham set up in the perfect counter-attacking setup, which is what Moyes can set his teams up to do very well. And in addition, obviously this 5-4-1 formation that they're playing is a perfect enabler for that. So he has Michail Antonio running in behind the defense, and kind of similar to what Watkins did against Liverpool, Antonio really got the ball to stick, and he's kind of, morphed into this Tim Cahill, second coming of Tim Cahill, just like Souček has morphed into the second coming of Fellaini. So, and having Cresswell at left centre back was, I thought, pretty astute, because it kind of let Cresswell deliver. He's obviously got really good shape on his crosses, so they were able to put in those early and attack people like Antonio and Souček making late runs into the box, as well as Bowen coming in from the right, while Masuaku also had space to dribble down the left, which is what he does very well. So yeah, I think Moyes set up very well, and he got the best out of a number of players. And Leicester missed creativity, and basically they got Leicestered. So it was a case of things coming things came full circle basically.
So next match, guys, we are now off to Chelsea 4, Crystal Palace 0. The most boring game, in my opinion, this weekend. Even a Wolves 1-0 with Fulham was more entertaining than watching Frank Lampard suddenly trump Crystal Palace and then take all the credit like as if it was some tactical masterpiece. If you had seen the match, you would have seen. It was, it was just Crystal Palace having their usual 1 in 4 games. They'll be like, guys, holiday. It's like, it's still early days in the season. But sure, Ram. Now, since we had so much of a go at Lampard last week in the same episode, I was extremely critical. I'm going to give you the floor to tell us what you thought he did well.
Well, I think some things played in Chelsea's favour. For example, you can play Jorginho in midfield and see a game through very comfortably if the opposition does not run at him, which they did not, because Crystal Palace were very happy executing their mid-block and just sitting back and waiting to absorb chances, and then let Eze, Zaha, Ayew and Townsend loose down the flanks. So in that sense, Jorginho was very comfortable in position, which allowed him to have admittedly a good game. And he also scored 2 penalties, which is cool, and apparently he's the first person to do that since Lampard for Chelsea. But it's a bit of a meaningless stat at the moment, although he did have a good game. And I felt as if Ben Chilwell was probably our standout performer on the day. I felt as if the 4-2-3-1 setup allowed the fullbacks to get higher and not suffer as much as, with one not adequately competent defensive midfielder and 2 attacking eights. So Chilwell was excellent. His deliveries were, top notch. His carrying into the final third is very good. Obviously, he got into that same sort of position that Alonso usually gets in and dispatches from in the penalty area. Abraham had a storming game. That was definitely it was the right call to play Havertz behind Abraham. So I think they found the right role for Kai Havertz, and Timo Werner was probably not the best on the left, but I think he made it work this time. So I think Lampard did find the right setup in terms of 4-2-3-1, which could be the way that they should go. I mean, in future games.
Let me poke a hole in that strategy. Let me ask you, are you a fan of Reece James being dropped for Aspie again at right back?
I'm okay with it, because I feel I'm okay with them rotating in and out.
I know your heart right now is really breaking out for Reece James, who can do all of those things, who can cross as well as Aspie, right? He's pretty good at most of the things that you would want. He's such beast. Yeah. And he's young, and you want your young talents to come. You can't keep complaining on Twitter about Chelsea not letting youngsters come through, and yet you keep playing Aspie at right back.
I am not complaining anymore. Reece James started the season ahead of Azpilicueta, but now I think it's okay to rotate them in between games, because Aspie is very important for one, character on the pitch, and 2, his one-on-one defending is still second to none in the team, in my opinion. So, and Reece James can get turned pretty easily on occasion. So it does kind of make sense with people like Eze and Zaha potentially on the left. That
For sure, bro. I mean, Crystal Palace will have this once a month. They'll have this amazingly shit performance.
Yeah.
Chelsea, which is so lucky, it just happened to be against them. So sure, it's a tactical masterclass, or Roy Hodgson's team going to break early. But we'll move on to Everton and Brighton. What is that, Ram? Sorry.
we can call it even. Over there.
Okay, that's why it's called Tale of Two Halves. You call it Tactical Master Half. But yes, congratulations to them. Arsenal 2, Sheffield United 1, second most boring game of this weekend. Suhrith, what do you like about it?
I mean, Arteta was able to change it, right, at halftime. I mean, and for the second half, after he withdrew one of the strikers, after he withdrew, Nketiah, who started up front and sort of brought in Saka and went with Aubameyang down the wing and a little more width from the wide areas. And Arteta's again shown himself to be a very, very astute coach in terms of he's got the team structured now. There's a greater amount of defensive solidity. There's greater cohesiveness in midfield, and he's clearly able to change it from the bench, which is, I think, always the hallmark of a talented manager. Arsenal look therefore very good. It looks like they might sign Thomas Partey. There's been a last-minute bid. By the time this goes out, we'll have greater clarity on that. And if they do manage to get that deal over the line, I think they'll be all the more stronger for it. And they'll almost certainly, I think, finish in the top 4. Maybe even look, to challenge Liverpool and Man City. Who knows if things really go to plan.
I think there's a lot of merit to your Arteta point, because something I saw during the Leeds match was that Arsenal are the second ranked team on the most distance covered in the English Premier League this season so far. So that tells you that's if there's anything that Arteta has changed the DNA, that's a work rate, and that also tells you Ozil is nowhere getting into this team in the whole of English Premier League if Arsenal are number 2 and the distance covered, which is great. So that tells you a lot about why he likes the Maitland-Niles and the Sakas of the world. But let's talk about
Who's
the number one ranked.
Who's number 1 in distance covered?
I was just getting there.
Okay,
I was
sorry.
just getting there.
Sorry.
I was just getting there. Which is that, of course, it is one Mr. Leeds United and Marcelo Bielsa. So we've been. So that shouldn't surprise you if you follow Bielsa. He would like his teams to be number 1 in terms of distance covered only. Anything else, he's okay. It's about the process. But when it comes to distance covered, you better be the champs in that. And what a match! Leeds won, Manchester City won. This was a match that I expected a cricket score after the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because very clearly it is Pep Guardiola. I almost felt like he's paying a tribute to someone he looks up to by bringing his A game tactically. How they marked out Calvin Phillips out of this game was really, really marvelous to see, because I hope others don't take notes of this. And then they marked out the next line. So if you marked out Calvin Phillips, you could see Fulham did that. But then Leeds had a second plan, which is you hit the fullbacks out wide in the second line. You hit it from the goalkeeper so that you can flick it on to the striker. They marked that out as well. So then we had to go to our plan C, which is to hit it even further. So those were quite fascinating things to see from tactically how Guardiola decided to throw Bielsa off. But here's the thing about such short fix approaches. It comes at a price. You could see that they couldn't last doing with that press more than 20-30 minutes. It's impossible to do it for 90 minutes, because if you do it for 90 minutes, then you're pretty much Leeds United, because only a Marcelo Bielsa team can do it. It takes a certain level of pre-season and conditioning and certain level of coaching to have. We've been doing this for 2.5 seasons now. 90 minutes of non-stop press, because if I was hoping within 20 minutes, if we can survive 1-0, I was sure we would be back, because this happens all the time. It happens all the time with respect to how people play Leeds, which is the first 20-30 minutes, throw everything at them, give them a taste of their own medicine. But then if we survive, there's a lot at the end of it, which is what Leeds went on to show. Because in the second half, the same Calvin Phillips became a great factor. He was the one who blocked out Kevin De Bruyne completely, despite KDB being so good in this game, yet to see a Calvin Phillips have that kind of an impact. And it was so nice for Rodrigo to come on and get this goal, for his morale, for him to prove it at such a big game as a substitute, and therefore continue to get the vote of confidence from a manager who said after this game that once he's back to full fitness, I'm pretty sure he'll be a difference maker. So as the most expensive Leeds United signing ever, I think that's a massive vote of confidence, and that's a good sign as well.
Yeah, so I just think there were at least two things that Bielsa said, one before the match and after the match, that were fascinating. One is when he was asked if Guardiola's teams are sort of, inspired by his own tactical and philosophical thinking. He said there was nothing there to really kind of suggest that was the case, and I think he might well be right to a certain extent. And the other thing that he said after the match was that there was nothing especially tactically fascinating about this particular match, and I really agree with him completely. It would have been tactically fascinating had, the first half, yes, there were certain things that Guardiola did, which kind of, as SA discussed, to kind of, stop Calvin Phillips from playing, to stop the ball reaching the fullbacks in wide areas. There were these were certainly things that he did, but I didn't think that in terms of a system itself there was anything tactically fascinating. It would have been fascinating had Guardiola kind of stuck to his guns and tried to keep, play with a midfield, played Fernandinho in midfield, tried to keep the ball. Then it would have been a clash of systems which would have made it more fascinating. In this case, Guardiola was trying to match Bielsa. I don't understand quite why he does this. He did the same in the Champions League against Lyon when there was completely no need to do this. I mean, City are a team with a wealth of talent. And I think at some point there are some matches when Guardiola should just go for it. I mean, stick to what City does well and the results would follow.
I would just like to point out certain patterns in Suhrith's behavior in our podcast so far. If of all the games that we've seen in EPL this year, I'm sure most of us would agree that the Liverpool Leeds season opener was mind-blowing, tactically, entertainment, everything. But Suhrith, of course, was like, I was actually not a big fan of that game and it was boring. And again, now Manchester City Leeds was yet again a game that has been touted to be a great battle where it was not a 1-1 injustice. But Suhrith, of course, is Suhrith. I respect that, Suhrith. I just want to point out these patterns. That's 40 weeks, lots of episodes. I hope there are enough audiences to be able to be the best judge of that. So we'll wrap this segment with that and go to the next segment, which is the Octopus Bounty, where we make predictions about next week's fixtures. But before that, we will have a look at all the fantastic predictions made from last week's fixtures in the Octopus Bounty segment. The bounty is right now at 2,000. Last week it was 1,500. We had asked which team will have the most shots on target. I actually predicted Liverpool. It turns out that Aston Villa had the most shots on target with 11. So well done to all of us, geniuses. The second question was which team will jump up the most places in the standings by today. We all guessed City and United, but the right answer was Southampton, who went from 15 to 11. And the third question was which fixture will have the earliest substitution. And of course, you all jumped in Leeds and ruined my answer. I should have thought this through. But it was Everton who subbed in Iwobi for Richarlison in the 25th minute. And finally, the highest scoring fixture was asked. And Anirban got the fixture right when he predicted Aston Villa and Liverpool. But little did we get the result right. So I'm so happy the bounties from 1,500 has become 2,000. I'm going to do the same thing now. 3 questions right out of this bowl of random stuff that we put up. And in the order of Suhrith, Ram and Abijit. The first one is, which team will be at the top of the table next Monday?
Everton.
Ram, you can go down.
It's
The
sorry. The
No,
order
sorry, okay.
order was
Yeah,
Suhrith,
it's okay,
Abijit. Okay.
Okay. Abijit,
So
Sorry.
should I go?
Yeah.
I hope Liverpool. Yeah, but Liverpool will have to beat them by a huge margin, right? For that.
Yeah. Ram.
What's the
Everton.
Just wait a second. I will check the statisticians' help. What's the margin we need for Liverpool to beat Everton by? For
You
them
need
to
to
be
beat
top?
them by 3 or 4 goals. So
Let's go for
Yeah.
it. Liverpool will be top of the table.
Make sure you give him your phone number, okay? Okay. Ram, your answer?
I think it's going to be Everton because Liverpool probably won't beat them by 3 or 4 goals.
I think it'll be a draw, and then so that Everton
Yeah.
will stay.
Yeah, I'm going with Everton as well.
I'm
So
very
I'll pick
scared.
the next one.
This match. Yeah.
The next one is which team will have the more. Okay, wait, we've done this too many times. I'm not doing this shit. The next one is which team will take the most number of goal kicks?
Goodness gracious me. Newcastle, because Man United will keep shooting until shooting to me.
That's hilarious.
Abijit.
Most number of goal kicks. That's just I don't even like. This is such a bizarre one. Uh, let's go Leeds.
Okay, I think it's going to be Southampton. Very, they games are very, there are too many breaks in play when you're playing against Southampton. So yeah.
Okay, and I'm copying Ram's answer. I'm also going with Southampton. And the third one is which player will complete the most passes?
I know this answer.
I mean, I've picked this before, but I'll make a change. I mean, I'll go with Michael Keane at Everton.
I'll go with Thiago.
I will go with Calvin Phillips.
Ram, you can't keep taking my answers every time. Okay, Calvin Phillips is my answer as well. And the last one, highest scoring match and the result.
I'm going
Suhrith.
Chelsea, Southampton 3-3.
I'm going Everton, Liverpool. But yeah, that'll be contradictory to my first answer. But I think it's going to be a crazy scoring. Something like 4-2, 4-3, something.
Who's going to win?
I think,
Yeah, of course, Liverpool. Yeah.
I think it's also going to be Chelsea Southampton. So Chelsea Southampton will probably end up Chelsea 4, Southampton 3. That's just, yeah.
Okay, I'm going Leicester, Aston Villa. And I'm going for 4-1.
A bad
Okay.
choice.
Cool. So that's that, guys. So which brings us to the next segment, which is fantastic players and where to find them. Okay, so the FPL mini league that a lot of people have been asking me for some codes. Sorry, the code is not going to be available. I'm just going to give it to people who ask even after the 10th episode. That is true loyalty. You've stayed that far means you deserve the code. Until then, I'm not giving you. We have already 1,000 people in that. We're very happy. But right now we have one Mr. Aditya Abhishek with the team name Abby at 329 with a game week score of 92 at the top. And I don't see any of our panelists anywhere in the vicinity in the top 10. But I'm pretty sure one Mr. Panelist here would like to make it clear. Suhrith,
I'm
where
at
are you at?
18th. I would have been in the top 10
Oh.
had I not subbed out Son Heung-min because I was not sure if he was fit to play United or not. So I
Don't be so modest
So I
about it.
transferred him out and brought Sterling in, and also because of that I had to get Vardy out and I brought Calvert-Lewin in. And had I not made this sort of set of changes, I could have kept my subs intact, transfers intact, and I would have had, I think, at least another 8 points, which would have put me in the top 10.
Right. Okay. And I'm not even going to ask Ram, Abijit, or myself where we are at because
shouldn't.
we are doing pathetic. Let's quickly get into the captain section though.
Totally want to skip it,
So
yes.
this is where we pick a captain and we tell you why. Suhrith, who's your captain and why?
I'll stick with Mo Salah against Everton. I went with him last week, and I think when you're in doubt, you go with the likes of Salah.
Yeah.
Right. Son versus West Ham is a good shout. Ram?
The man I keep forgetting to captain every week, so Mohamed Salah.
Brings me to the end of this program, guys. Thank you, Suhrith. Thank you, Ram. Thank you, Abijit, for this fantastic program. My captain pick for this game is going to be KDB. And that's it, guys. See you next episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.